Imagine a member of your tribe suddenly starts hearing voices no one else can hear. They talk to people who aren't there. Some days they can't get out of bed. Other days they're terrified of shadows. There are no doctors, no medicine, no hospitals, no word for mental illness. So what did your ancestors actually do with someone whose mind had turned against them? The easy assumption is something brutal, that they were feared, cast out, left to die, or killed as monsters. And sometimes that did happen. But the real answer is far stranger, and in some ways, far kinder than you'd expect. Because in a world with no science to explain a broken mind, ancient humans came up with explanations of their own, and some of those mad people weren't feared at all. They were treated as the most powerful people in the entire tribe. So what really happened to the insane in the ancient world? The truth will surprise you. First, understand the world they lived in. Our ancestors had no concept of a chemical imbalance, no idea of neurons or brain disorders. When someone's behavior became strange, frightening, or impossible to explain, they reached for the only framework they had, the supernatural. A person hearing voices wasn't ill. They were touched by spirits, visited by gods, or possessed by something from beyond. This might sound primitive, but think about it from their side. If you'd never heard of the brain, and your friend suddenly started speaking to invisible people, the spirit world is talking through them, is a perfectly logical conclusion. The way a culture explains madness completely shapes how it treats the mad. And that explanation could mean the difference between worship and death. And here is the twist most people never expect. In many ancient and tribal societies, the very traits we'd now call symptoms, hearing voices, seeing visions, falling into trances, speaking in strange tongues, were not signs of a broken mind. They were signs of a chosen one. These people often became the shaman, the healer, the spirit talker, the most respected figure in the group. A person who could slip into another world and come back was priceless to a tribe that believed that world was real. Their visions guided hunts, healed the sick, and settled disputes. What one culture calls insanity, another calls a superpower. The same brain that might get you locked away today could, in the ancient world, have made you sacred. This wasn't always accidental, either. Some cultures actively pushed people toward these altered states on purpose. Through fasting for days, isolation, sleep deprivation, rhythmic drumming, dancing to exhaustion, or eating specific mind-altering plants, a person could deliberately trigger visions and voices, a vision quest. What we would treat as a psychotic episode to be medicated away, they treated as a sacred journey to be sought out. The line between a spiritual experience and a mental breakdown, it turns out, has always been blurry and drawn differently by every culture. To your ancestors, a mind that broke free of ordinary reality wasn't always malfunctioning. Sometimes it was doing exactly what they wanted it to do. But not every response was reverent. Some were shockingly hands-on. Across the ancient world, from Europe to South America, archaeologists keep finding skulls with neat, deliberate holes drilled or scraped into them. This is trepanation, cutting a hole in a living person's head on purpose. It's one of the oldest known surgeries, thousands of years old. And the leading theory for why? To let something out. If they believed madness was caused by an evil spirit or bad pressure trapped inside the skull, then drilling a hole to release it made perfect, terrible sense. The truly astonishing part, many of these skulls show clear signs of healing around the hole, which means the patients survived, sometimes for years. People were doing brain surgery on the mentally ill before the invention of the wheel. Now, an important correction to the "they were all monsters" idea. In a small hunter-gatherer band, you couldn't simply throw someone away. These were people's sons, mothers, brothers, faces they'd known their whole lives. And the evidence suggests real compassion existed. We found ancient skeletons of people with severe disabilities and conditions who survived for many years, which is only possible if the group fed them, sheltered them, and protected them when they couldn't fend for themselves. A tribe that cared for its injured and disabled almost certainly cared, at least sometimes, for its troubled minds too. The image of ancient people as purely savage is a modern flattery of ourselves. Often, they simply looked after their own. But let's not romanticize it either. For every shaman honored for their visions, there were others whose madness brought them nothing but suffering. If someone became violent, dangerous, or a threat to a group whose survival depended on cooperation, the response could be brutal, restraint, exile, or death. And the supernatural explanation cut both ways. If your voices were seen as a gift, you were sacred. But if they were seen as an evil spirit or a curse, you could be feared, beaten, driven out, or killed to protect everyone else. The same symptoms, the same person, worshipped in one tribe, murdered in the next. Whether madness was a blessing or a death sentence often came down to nothing more than which story your culture happened to believe. As humans settled into larger societies, the spirit's explanation hardened into something more organized and often more dangerous: possession. Now, madness wasn't a random spirit, but a demon, an evil force that had invaded the person. And the response became exorcism. Rituals, chanting, prayer, and sometimes violence, all aimed at driving the demon out. For some, this was gentle and comforting, a whole community rallying to save them. For others, it was horrific: starvation, beatings, torture, all inflicted in the sincere belief they were fighting evil, not a person. As societies grew, the troubled mind slowly shifted from something sacred towards something sinful, a change that would cast a long, dark shadow over how we treated mental illness for thousands of years to come. And yet, even in the ancient world, a few remarkable people began to push back against the supernatural. Some early physicians, thousands of years ago, dared to suggest a radical idea that madness might come not from spirits, but from the body itself. They proposed that imbalances inside a person, in their fluids, their diet, their environment, could disturb the mind, and that it could therefore be treated with rest, herbs, baths, changes in food and lifestyle. They were wrong on the details, but the instinct was revolutionary: that a troubled mind was a natural problem with natural causes, not a battle with the beyond. These were the first faint sparks of the idea that would, thousands of years later, become psychiatry. The seed of "it's an illness, not a curse" is far older than we usually think. Now, why does any of this matter to you? Because it reveals something uncomfortable and profound. Madness isn't just a fact of biology. It's also a story a culture tells. The exact same person, hearing the exact same voices, could be a revered prophet, a patient getting a hole drilled in their skull, a demon-possessed victim of exorcism, or a modern patient with a diagnosis and a prescription. The voices didn't change across all that time. Only the story around them did. How we treat the suffering mind has always said as much about us, our fears, our beliefs, our compassion, as it does about them. Our ancestors weren't simply crueler or dumber than us. They were doing their best to make sense of the most mysterious thing in the universe, a mind that had stopped making sense. And before we feel too superior, it's worth a humbling thought. For most of recorded history, including shockingly recently, our advanced societies chained the mentally ill in asylums, put them on public display, drilled and shocked and lobotomized them, and locked them away out of sight. In some ways, a shaman honored by their tribe was treated with more dignity than a patient in an 1800s madhouse. We like to imagine progress as a straight line, from ignorant past to enlightened present. But the story of how humans have treated troubled minds is not a straight line at all. It's a strange, winding path of worship and cruelty, care and fear, that we are, honestly, still walking today. So the next time you picture an ancient human with a mind in turmoil, don't just imagine a fearful mob and a body cast out into the dark. Imagine, too, a shaman leading a tribe with the power of their visions. Imagine a family quietly feeding and sheltering a son who could no longer feed himself. Imagine the first physician who dared to say, "This is not a demon, this is a sickness." Your ancestors met the mystery of the broken mind with everything they had: terror and tenderness, cruelty and awe. And the strangest thought of all is that we are still, right now, just another culture telling our own story about what madness means. It makes you wonder how the humans of the future will judge the way we treat troubled minds today. Ever wondered what else our ancestors understood about the human mind long before we had the science to explain it?